Welcome to Public Forum, a community outreach program produced by North Idaho College located on Lake Coeur d'Alene. Featuring guests from around the globe addressing a wide variety of subjects, Public Forum serves to educate and enlighten. Please join host and moderator, political scientist Tony Stewart, in welcoming today's guests.
Our program today is a very special one, and it's sentimental in many ways. We're losing a member of our panel that's been with us for a very long time, and we're going to honor this individual today on our program. I'm speaking of panelist Steve Schenk. Steve came to us in 1985 and has been on the program from then until 2001, as I've indicated, for 16 years. The program's been airing for 29 years, and he's been here the last 16. We have some very special things to say about him and get his response today on our program. I've invited to the program today 3 people that I could not think would be any better than those 3 to talk about Steve Schenk, because they worked so closely with him in a number of capacities. I first of all welcome to the program Mary Lou Reed. She's a former state senator in Idaho where she served for 12 years, and in that capacity she worked closely with Steve Schenk in North Idaho College dealing with higher education. And secondly, she is the president of the Human Rights Education Foundation, and Steve serves as a board member raising funds for education and human rights. Welcome, Mary Lou Reed.
Thank you, Tony. It's wonderful to be here.
And I'm equally pleased to have Dr. Michael Burke, who's the president of our institution at North Idaho College. And of course, Dr. Burke, since he arrived, and I might add, has done a remarkable job in his tenure here. He's worked very closely with his vice president for college relations development, Steve Schenk. Dr. Burke, thank you for being here and participating in our farewell to Steve Schenk.
It's my pleasure.
And as always, I'm so pleased to have our regular panelist, Janelle Burke, who has been with Steve for 16 years. In fact, Janelle's been here more than a quarter of a century, so we always say Steve is the newcomer, the young Turk on the program. And Janelle, we know that this means a lot to you, and thank you for being here today, too. Steve, thank you for all you've done. We have a lot to say in a few minutes, and I will not introduce you as I normally do. I will wait till a little later in the program. We're going to start with Mary Lou Reed, who, again, has known him all these 16 years, and get a comment from her about what Steve Schenk has meant to this particular TV program and to the community.
Well, thank you, Tony. Steve, you really are on the hot seat today. Steve is always so comfortable in every situation that it's kind of fun, I think, to see him a little bit squirming. Anyway, Steve, it is going to be very hard to let you go. We will certainly miss you at the Human Rights Education Foundation. The Human Rights Education Foundation is the most recent thing that we worked together on. And, Steve has so many talents. He needs almost a coat rack or a hat rack, his own hat rack to hang those hats on. But the talent that you have shared the most with the Human Rights Education Foundation Board has been your incredible thinking ability and your understanding of strategic planning. So Steve, for the last 2 years, has walked our board through the strategic planning process, helped us to set our goals and objectives, and then has helped us figure out ways in which we're going to be able to accomplish them. And Steve, with your help, we have been able, I think, to be as effective as we could as a new board. You really are a consummate communicator, and when Tony mentions my years in the legislature, this is one of the things that you really have done for the college, is to be able to communicate the importance of the community college message to people from all walks of life. And legislators we're all from all walks of life. And I think that you have been a tremendous ambassador for North Idaho College. Another aspect I'd like to mention that isn't mentioned very often, Steve has been a real supporter of the Coeur d'Alene Summer Theater, and he has been the administrative liaison with the Summer Theater staff for some time. And it's pretty hard to put a summer program together every year in 2.5 months. It's very complicated to get a theater group up and going. And Steve, you have been so helpful, so cooperative. You're really very definitely going to be missed. Tony, do I get to just keep going on and on?
I'll get to
because I think that that is an aspect that isn't well known. I think everybody thinks of you as an ambassador for the college, and I think this is in part because you really treat each person as an individual with a great deal of respect and dignity, and you have a personality that has no edges on it. I think it's hard to let you go, but so marvelous that you're staying in the community college field, because I think that's an area that needs the kind of knowledge and advocacy that you bring to it. So thank you for all you've done. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Dr. Burke.
Oh, I just want to say that I'm going to sincerely miss you, Steve. You had an awful lot to do, and I've probably never told you this, but you've had an awful lot to do with me coming here. You had the onerous task of, when I was interviewing, of occupying an hour or so of my time to give me a campus tour while the committee was deliberating, I think. And I took the opportunity of that tour to, learn a lot about the college, but also took the time to learn about you and ask you a lot of questions about what we were doing with our foundation. And I realized probably 15 minutes into that hour discussion that this is a place I wanted to work. We were in good hands. The institution had quality people like you associated with it. And also learned that in maybe 5 of that 15 minutes that you were probably the best at fundraising of anyone I've ever met. And I knew that this is somebody I want to be associated with. You have the skill set that Mary Lou has described is rare in people in our profession. To have all those skills in one person is just hard to find. I can't imagine being able to find a replacement. It's really inconceivable, I think, to be able to think we can find somebody with all the skills and attributes you have to fill your position. It's just not going to happen. But I've appreciated your friendship, somebody down the hall that I can talk to about a lot of issues that we deal with, and how this college relates to our community, and how we work together with the city and the county and the state government. You've got insights to that very few people in the state of Idaho have. And the institution is going to be diminished with your leaving.
Thank you, Dr. Burke, so much. Janelle Burke. By the way, they're not related, but they have the same name.
Well, Steve, this is going to be a real pleasure. When I was thinking about this program, I thought, what would the viewers like to know about Steve Schenk? So I thought of 3 adjectives that I think describe you and that our viewers might like to know. First of all, you're very professional in everything that you do, being on the show, in your work, and I hear that from people out in town where you've served on boards or championed a cause, that it's always in a very professional manner. The second one is optimistic, and I would add to that positive. Have you and I ever had a disagreement? Have I ever seen a bad day with you? It's always very good. You're always very gracious, very kind to our guests, and so a very optimistic, positive attitude. And then the third adjective is 2 words: good thinker. You're a quick thinker, and we asked different questions, and we sometimes thought along different lines in terms of the questions we were going to ask, but it always turned out beautifully. Well, we've seen each other once a week most of the time, or a little more often than that, and we're really going to miss you, but we wish you the best in your new ventures, and we're very pleased and happy that you've had this time with us and that you're going to have a new experience. We hope you'll come back.
Thank you. And I go last, but certainly there's no way that any group can cover everything about Steve Schenk, and so there's always other things to say other than what you've already said. I will echo some of the comments of Dr. Burke. There's a few people at every institution or every government entity that when they leave, they aren't replaced. We hear that saying everybody's replaceable. We mean by that, of course, someone takes the position, but I agree with Dr. Burke that whomever takes your position won't be a Steve Schenk, and there's things you've done they will not do. And oftentimes with someone like you two, it takes more than one person to replace them, and I know that's a challenge to Dr. Burke, knowing that you do so many extra things beyond your job description. I think one of the great strengths of Steve Schenk is that he always fulfilled professionally his job description to the letter, but never stopped there. In fact, I would say 50% of the work that he has done in this community was not required of him. In the job description, he was not paid for it. I had the pleasure of being interviewed by those who were going to hire him, and they asked me about his strengths, which was a long list, and then they said, how about any weaknesses? And I said he has none except the fact that he doesn't know how to say no. He says yes to all community endeavors, and so it's consumed his life for the last 16 years here. But the point that I want to make most of all about Steve Schenk is something that I personally am deeply involved in and committed to, and that's the Constitution of the United States. there's a real balance that one has to have, I think, in supporting the Constitution. One has to believe in the 14th Amendment, which deals with civil rights and human rights for every person, but equally standing side by side with that's the First Amendment, which deals with free speech and free press. And Steve, you have been true to both of those concepts. You've been true to both those amendments your entire stay in this county. And the conversation that I had with Steve that I'd like to share with our viewers dealt with a very difficult moment at North Idaho College some years ago. And I was in his office, and you were getting a lot of heat, a lot of criticism, as the institution was, and you were defending the Constitution, both the First and 14th Amendment. And you looked across the desk to me and said that these principles are so great and they're so important that no job is worth not defending them, that the principles are so great that one can go do something else. I can say that there is nothing you could have said to me that was demonstrating your great integrity to that point. That is just the highest of integrity. So I will always be grateful that you defended our institution and its integrity and our community, but you always did, as Mary Lou Reed said, without being in someone's face or being very aggressive or offensive, but just solid and strong. And so with that, you're leaving us with a stronger community, and the Constitution's even in better shape because you were here. With that, we're going to turn to some questions now for you, in which you get to, I want these questions to be on the show, about the show, because you've been here so long and you've given these years, and you weren't paid to do this. And Steve would be very busy, but Janelle knows that he would take time to do this show, even if he had to work later in the evening. And so what a commitment to this program. My first question, I want to start first. Janelle usually does, but I'm taking advantage of the situation. I want you to tell us, if you would, you and I have discussed this somewhat before, of the myriad of TV shows you've done over the 16 years. Gee, there's hundreds of shows. We're now past 1,400 shows in the 29 years. This is like asking someone who's their favorite child if they have 10 children. But what is your favorite show or a series of shows that you remember most?
Oh, Tony, that's a big question. The ones that probably stand out in my mind are shows that we did with people who were such consummate experts in their field. I think of Gunther Schuller, and I am musically illiterate. My wife and friends will tell you that. I really don't have any talent, don't have a great deal of knowledge in that area, but the breadth of his knowledge was just phenomenal. I could have listened to him all afternoon. And I sadly don't even remember the other gentleman's name, but he was the president of the World Population Organization. That's probably a mistake in itself.
In Washington, D.C.
And he similarly on issues of population growth and what that the threat that uncontrolled population growth posed to liberties, to individual rights, to women in particular, an aspect of that topic I was not aware of until I spoke with him. But again, his knowledge of that field was just overwhelming. And so those shows stick out in my mind. On the opposite end of the spectrum, and again, it's been so many years ago, I won't even begin to know the person's name, but we did a series on unexplained phenomenon, or phenomena. And there was the woman who claimed to be in regular communication with the Interstellar Space League. Was that the organization?
Miss Francesca
was that her name? That was certainly an interesting show. We had Trekkies, followers of the Star Trek television series, and we had the amazing Randy, I think, who I have seen on public television in other ways, national public television. He debunks myths. These mysteries and things. He was also a lot of fun to visit with. A former magician, I believe, the amazing Randy was. Interesting man.
That was the week we called Mysteries of Our Time.
Yeah.
We did a lot of shows with a lot of people.
Some of those shows were a mystery to me.
We could spend a couple hours just talking about that. One more question, then I'll go back to the others. Now that you've talked about the shows, that some of them, those are examples that come to your mind. After doing this for 16 years, how are you different, or what does it leave for you as you part 16 years on the program? How has it changed you in any way or affected you as a human being?
Well, it's certainly exposed me to a number of things that I probably wouldn't have had an opportunity to learn about. The gentleman with the World Population Organization is an excellent example. the show was always fairly comfortable for me because of my background as a reporter. It's maybe a little bit easier for me to walk into a show without knowing much of, if anything, other than the topic, sit down and ask questions. I do find that that most people have a story to tell, and maybe that it increased that awareness in me. And if you'll take the time to sit and talk to people about the things they're interested in, first of all, you'll never lack for conversation. If people want to know how to be a good conversationalist, simply find out what other people are interested in and talk to them about it. But most people have a story to tell, and most of the time it's very interesting.
That's your number one strength on this program. We do every kind of subject you can imagine, and no matter what it is, you're comfortable and you also have great questions. Now we're going to ask each one to do one question because of time, then we may get another round. Janelle, why don't you ask the next question?
Well, along the way, Steve, you've had a lot of interesting experiences. You've lived in other places, and you've met a lot of really wonderful people. And some of those people have been great influences in your life. Can you tell us a little bit, both places and people, the things that have influenced you in a very positive way? I want to give you an opportunity to say thank you to some folks.
Well, it may sound like just sort of a throwaway answer, but I assure you it isn't. I'd start with my parents. I just had the privilege to grow up in a home with loving parents who didn't just encourage, demanded some attention to education and expected that I and my brother and sister perform at above average levels in school. Taught me great lessons about human dignity and the equality of people. I'm probably very, very common. I think a lot of adults our age out there will recognize this phrase. The older I get, the more I realize just what quality people my parents were. And unfortunately, my father's been gone for 31 years now, but my mother is still well and volunteering her time to libraries and other good causes in St. Louis, Missouri, so I owe a debt of gratitude to them. I could go through a long list, but certainly Bob Peck, a newspaper publisher in Wyoming, he and his brother Roy gave us an opportunity as actually a couple of youngsters, I'm talking about my wife and myself, to not only publish a weekly newspaper, but become majority owners of it. He's a wonderful man. Never once in all the years we worked together did he ever do anything other than be available for advice. And I know he got phone calls. He had to have gotten phone calls, as well known as he was, about what those darn kids in Thermopolis, Wyoming were doing wrong. But he never presumed to come in and tell us how to run the paper that he owned the majority of, by far the majority of in the beginning. So I admire him tremendously. And certainly turnabout is fair play, and I do get too much credit. I hope I have some reputation for being honest at least most of the time, and I say this honestly. I get way too much credit for the good things that have happened at North Idaho College over these past 17 years, but I could point to everybody around this table and talk about the things I've learned from each of you. Certainly, Tony, what little I've done for the human rights movement in Idaho pales in comparison to what you've done, and I've talked about you a number of times in my interview process in Arizona, and one of the things I tell those people is that in a very real way, I feel like I'm giving up the fight and leaving a job unfinished, especially when I look at people like you who have put themselves personally at risk and given up maybe the majority of your own life for a cause you believe in that doesn't serve you, it serves other people. What an inspiration that is. So maybe in the interest of the time on the show, I'll go around the room real quickly and talk about Mary Lou as a wonderful example of grace under pressure. I wish I were as good. I haven't always controlled my temper in this community. I guarantee you there are people who probably line up to cite examples of that, but I've never seen Mary Lou lose composure or be anything other than a perfect spokesperson for her ideals. Dr. Burke taught me more than I knew before, certainly, about planning. My planning skills, if I have any, have come from him. And Janelle, it's just been an absolute pleasure to work with you. You talk about an upbeat personality and always willing to give up your time. I work here. So being at this show, for me, is certainly an extension of my job. You're another one of those many, many people in this community who's willing to donate time to North Idaho College to make this a better college and make this a better community.
A typical Steve Schenk always shifted to praise other people. That's known as one of his beautiful qualities. Dr. Burke, you have the next question.
I was reading your bio in the student paper. You did a kind of a brief background on you in the paper that just came out today, and they mentioned kind of an interesting career, how you've moved from your journalism background into community college, higher education administration. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that road you went down, and it seems you're continuing down that road in Arizona.
It's been a serendipitous path for the most part. I wish I could say I have had this grand plan for my life, for my career, and it's just not the case. I always thought I wanted to go to law school, and chose journalism as a major at the University of Missouri because it had the world's oldest and arguably still best school of journalism. And I always liked to write, so that I had to declare a major. As a junior, I picked journalism and got tired of being a poor college student and went to work for a community college in St. Louis, largely to be close to Gretchen Berning, who I met in a History and Principles of Journalism class at Columbia, Missouri. We made the move west and sort of followed the reporter background that I had. And then when we decided to sell our interest in the newspaper and move again, there was a job opening in the paper that Gretchen saw as we were driving back to Thermopolis to collect our belongings and move out to the Coeur d'Alene, Spokane area. Job opening at North Idaho College. Well, I'd already worked at 2 other community colleges. Was just beginning to understand at that time how valuable the community college mission is, and it was a public relations director job. It was a very good fit with my other responsibilities to that point. And the one thing that was another real wild card was the request that Barry Schuler made of me to take over the fundraising responsibilities at North Idaho College. So,
and now you become, over the years, Vice President of College Relations and Development of the college with many, many duties. Mary Lou Reed has the next question.
Steve, it's obvious to everyone that when you and Gretchen leave, there's going to be a big hole in the fabric of our community. And my question to you, over the years, under the tutelage of Tony Stewart, who didn't really set that good an example along this line, have you learned to say no, or do you plan to get as involved in your community in Phoenix as you and Gretchen have been here?
I certainly hope to get involved. I'm going to try very hard. Somebody asked me, I can't remember who it was, do you realize that you'll never have as large an impact in Phoenix, Arizona as you've been able to have in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho? And that's almost certainly true. It's the 3rd, 4th, 5th largest city in the country. And my position there is an excellent one, but it's not as high in the organizational chart there as the one I have here. I hope to be able to fend off outside commitments for 6 months or so, because it's going to take a long time to learn a system as large as the Maricopa Community College system with 10 colleges and 264,000 students. I'll have a lot to do just to learn the names of the people who work in the building that I work in at the district office, the presidents at all the colleges, the 40 foundation board members there. So I definitely, I believe when you ask as much of people in a community as you invariably do in the role of a fundraiser, you need to give something back too. So I hope to get involved, but I hope to give myself 6 months or a year to learn this new position first, and then look for some ways that I can also contribute to the community outside the community college.
Exciting challenge. You'll do it.
Steve, those questions were excellent by the panel members, and again, we will try to continue on without you on this particular program, but Janelle and I will always remember that you contributed with incredible substance. I think we should not let you leave the program without taking advantage of what Janelle talked about, not only your professionalism, but your insights and your intelligence. And as you leave our viewers, that they are so special to us, as you know. What would you like to say to our viewers as you leave them after 16 years? They've been very special. Many of them have been with us a long time. They're very loyal.
Well, it's been a privilege to be a part of this show, which, as I understand, is the longest-running public television show in the country. It's been a privilege to use this selfishly as a venue to promote North Idaho College. And I guess that between those two comments, my advice to our viewers, if I could be that bold, is twofold. One is to continue to support public television. I know that it is sometimes controversial, but that's the nature of a free society. We're privileged to be able to talk about different viewpoints, and that's an important freedom to maintain. The other it would be for most of you, most parts of the country, well, every state in the union is served by community colleges. I said when I came here 17 years ago, I was only beginning to understand how valuable that mission is, and I'm delighted to be leaving here, the great professional privilege of my career, to go on to work at another community college. I am just absolutely in love with that mission. I think in every community in the country today we look around and we see things that need to be done, and I think education is at the heart of the cure for almost anything that ails civilization. After 17 years here, I'm still delighted to learn about things I didn't know we were doing as a relatively small community college, and they are uniformly good things. I absolutely believe in that mission of access and service to traditionally underserved members of our communities, and I think that's what community colleges do better than any other form of education in the country. We reach back to students in high school through dual enrollment programs. We reach ahead to people who have graduated years and years ago or who have failed to graduate, to those who are functionally illiterate adults in our society, and give them some hope for a better life for themselves and their families. That's a mission that's worth supporting. And I would encourage people, wherever they are, if there's a community college near them, to take a look at what's being done there and find a way to support it, because it's critical to themselves and the quality of life that they enjoy in their communities.
And we have time for another question. We're almost out of time, but whoever sits in your seat in the future, as a panelist, what advice would you give them? We could play this back for them.
Listen to the moderator, follow Janelle, and have fun with the program, because it is a lot of fun. Gosh, we've met so many people over the years. I wish I could remember them all. But it's been a very wonderful learning experience. That's what people ask me, what do I enjoy about the show? And it's the opportunity to meet and learn about so many different people.
And extraordinary people have come through here. Out of the 1,440 shows we've done, we've had over 2,000 guests, because some shows we have 2 or 3 guests. And Steve, as you leave us and go to another exciting endeavor, as Janelle said, don't forget us, and we'll be in touch, of course. And I hope that you and your wonderful spouse, Gretchen, have a great, great future and great prosperity. And thank you from the bottom of our heart for 16 years of your service.
It's been my pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, I know that you have watched us for years enjoy the role that Steve Schenk has played as a panelist on this program, and the thoughtfulness and the in-depth and the insight that he's had. And I think he has always asked questions that you would ask if you could be here. And I know you will join us in saying a great thank you to Steve Schenk. What a great, great asset to our college, our community, and to this program. Please join us again next week when we will discuss yet another issue. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
Recorded on the campus of North Idaho College, Public Forum is the longest-running entirely college-produced program on PBS. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another edition of Public Forum on this public television station.